Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock, Jeff Upson with you here. It was an exciting weekend of wrestling action, Jeff, and really a big weekend coming up as well for the WPIAL as far as individuals go. AA and AAA sections complete, as well as the girls' WPIAL Championship. And we have AA and AAA Whippeals this weekend. Excited for another fun weekend of wrestling?
Of course. I mean, these are the best weekends of the year, right? This is going to be a lot of fun this weekend, but it's weird, right? It feels very different because typically we would be saying, these guys are getting ready to qualify for the state tournament, right? But that's not the case. They're going to have to go through another round of the postseason, another weekend. So it's kind of weird, right? Because typically we're looking forward to Hershey after this weekend, and that's not the case. We're going to be seeing probably a lot of good matches this weekend, and then following weekend, a lot of rematches, potentially, depending on the weights.
Yeah, definitely, especially in AAA. You see them here and there in AA, but definitely AAA could see it quite a bit as there's some weights that are stacked a lot more than others. Let's first start today's show in AA, Jeff. In the Eastern section at 107 pounds, Javion Chambers dominant to win his section title. Angelo Bonai of Central Valley wins the Northern section, and it is Darius Simmons of Burgestown who is dominant in winning the Southern section. So the seeds are out for the top 8 wrestlers in each weight class in the WPL tournament. So talk a little bit about both the results as well as the seeds, but the top 4 seeds going into this weekend at 107, Javion Chambers of Highlands gets the top spot. Darius Simmons of Burgestown, number 2. Rocco DeCario of Derry, number 3. Angelo Bonai of Central Valley, number 4. And the one thing that really sticks out to me is that the section champs are not seeded 1, 2, 3. So that's a big difference in AA. Usually that's how it goes in AA, but they're seeding them all out this year.
I like it. I like it a lot. And to be honest with you, I like the seeds here at 107 in AA. A lot of these guys have already hit. There's a lot of head-to-heads here. DeCario beat Bonai. So you look at him, you're like, well, he's not a section champ, but he's still number 3 in the seed. So I like the way that they did this with the top 8. And again, it's easier because these guys all hit. I don't think there was a match here where that it was kind of like, all right, where do we put this guy? And there wasn't a head-to-head result to look back at. Whether that was from the section tournament or whether that was from previous in the season. Chambers, Simmons, not surprised there, 2 upperclassmen. DeCario, having finished behind Simmons, I still like where he's at number 3. He's still, I think, it's proved that he's better than the guys that are below him. So, it's a good weight for the WPIL, but the problem is going into the regional tournament, there's a lot of firepower coming from the other districts. So maybe the top tier guys are going to get through, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and overall, I think it's as far as once you get through the top 3, maybe even top 4, then from there it's really anybody's game, right? So I think you're going to see a lot of different guys come out of this, and it may not necessarily be the top 8. So
Right.
be excited to see how they shake out. The top 8 do move on to Altoona for the regional tournament that Jeff was just mentioning. So just something to keep in mind as we talk about the weight classes. 114 pounds in the East, Preston Bubash of Elizabeth Forward. He was dominant on his way to a section title, 2 falls and a tech. Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley, he was your champion in the North. And in the South, Clayton Ely of McGuffey knocks off the top seed Alex Medlin of Best Center 8-4 to win that section title. The top seeds at 114, Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley, number 1. Preston Bubash of Elizabeth Forward, number 2. Clayton Ely of McGuffey, number 3. Derek Allen of Elwood City, number 4.
Yeah, and I guess the question that I have is how healthy is Allen, because he forfeited in the finals to Anderchak, but obviously I think he's getting geared up for the WPIL tournament as opposed to going against one of the best guys in the state in Bruce Anderchak. Again, I have no issues with any of the seeds here at 114. I like that Bubash is number 2. He and Anderchak have hit before. It was a 1-point match. He's a solid freshman, and he just tore through the sectional tournament. There wasn't a lot of surprises in the sections, especially in Double A. So again, I'm not saying everything went chalk, but everything kind of went as planned. Ely beating Medlin, I mean, that's a really good win for him. Ely's just a freshman. He's had some ups and downs for McGuffey this year, but Medlin's a guy who's a 2-time regional qualifier and a junior, so that was a really big win for him, and he got rewarded for that. Getting the 3rd seed there really, really sets him up nicely, I think.
Yeah, and it's going to set up for a potential rematch as well, as Medlin now goes in as the number 6 seed.
Right.
So they have a chance to meet in the quarters. Interesting enough, Victor Wagner gets the 5 seed in that weight class, and Wagner and Allen didn't meet. They were on opposite sides of the bracket. Wagner lost to Andrzejczyk in the semis and then had 2 falls in the consolations to take 3rd. So Wagner and Allen didn't meet in the section, but they'll get a chance to potentially meet in the quarters. And then Medlin and Ely will get a chance for a rematch. So should be some really good quarterfinal matchups there at 114 pounds. 121, your champion in the East was Carter Thomas of Burrell. He had a tight 4-3 win in the finals over Dylan Bateman of Derry. In the North, Austin Kasanovic of Avonworth, he was your champion. He was dominant on his way to the title. And Noah Collins of West Green was your champ in the South, beating Tucker Maine by fall in the finals. So your 121 top seeds, Austin Kasanovic of Avonworth is number 1, Carter Thomas of Burrell, number 2, Noah Collins of West Green, number 3, Dylan Bateman of Derry, number 4.
And again, I think this was a pretty easy bracket or easy seed to make here. With Kasanovic, you know what you're going to get. He's a junior. He was a regional place winner last year. Carter Thomas, same thing, regional qualifier last year. Noah Collins and Bateman, you could argue potentially that Bateman should be 3 over Collins, but to be honest with you, I don't think that's. I don't know if there's enough to say that Bateman should be ahead of Collins. Tucker Maine, especially considering Collins beat Tucker Maine, that was a really good win for him. But I think you look at this and you say, okay, the top 4 here are pretty solid, and including I would say with Tucker Maine down there at 5, like this is a pretty good weight class, and everything kind of went chalk, other than the one kind of close match with Thomas and Bateman. That's where I don't like to look at points and say, well, he only beat him by 1 versus he majored him. I still think like Bateman's been surging recently. He's had a really good end of the regular season, had a really good Ultimate Warrior tournament, and he was clearly close with Carter Thomas, who's the number 2. So I could see potentially having him at 3, but Collins gets a nod there.
Yeah, and you know what? The interesting thing about a lot of these matches, right? They could be 1 point, the next one's a major,
Right.
and next time they lose. So it's just the higher point scoring now. It just makes it harder to tell, within each match. But definitely, I'm sure Bateman would love to have another crack at Thomas before getting to have to face Kasanovic. But at the end of the day, it's hard to really argue the seed. So.
And you also got to look at like past credentials. Like Tucker Maine was a regional 8th place finisher last year, right? And he lost to Collins, who's a 2-time regional qualifier. Bateman's just a freshman, so you do look at the past credentials to help when there's not a head-to-head. So again,
Right.
we're splitting hairs.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I like it the way it is. The East at 127, Giovanni Beatrice of Derry was your champion. In the North, Antonio Bonai of Central Valley was the winner. And in the South, Danny Smith of Burgestown was the champion. At 127, the 3 section champs, top 3 seeds, Bonai at 1, Beatrice 2, Smith 3, Logan Fox of Elizabeth Forward at 4.
Yeah, and 127 really took a hit when they lost Cam Baker, right? Had a hand injury, which is what the reason was that he was out. I know we talked on the last show that we weren't exactly sure why he was out. Thought it was an injury, but didn't want to speculate. It was a hand injury. 27 is just not very deep in the WPIAL. Bonai is clearly the top guy here, being a guy who was a state place winner 2 years ago and a state qualifier last year. Beatrice, he's been a journeyman for Derry. I feel like he's been around for a really long time. He's been wrestling well. Got a lot of good experience in the team postseason aspect of it. But to be honest with you, there's just not a lot of depth. So I have no complaints about the seeds, but I just, I feel like it's a grim outlook for the WPIAL when they go into the Southwest Regional, because outside of Bonai, it's going to be tough.
133 pounds, the Eastern champion Anthony Mucci of Derry. The Northern champ was Garen McDonald of Central Valley, and the South champ Drake McClure of Bentworth. And notable result, Emmett Wolf of McGuffey. He defaulted to McClure in the finals, but he did beat Mason Wright of Best Center 5-3. So the seeds going into it: Mucci of Derry at 1, McClure of Bentworth number 2, Wolf of McGuffey number 3, and Mason Wright of Best Center number 4.
And I like the fact that they didn't punish Mason Wright and not put him where I believe he was deserving to be, right, despite having that upset loss. I'll start in the East with Anthony Mucci. He really opened it up against Jacob Stewart. I mean, he tech followed him. That was a really solid win for him. Not that he hasn't had those caliber wins, but just to that extent, that was pretty impressive in my opinion. The North, I really didn't know who was going to come out of there. It wasn't a very strong bracket. And then of course, when you look at the South, McClure winning by injury default. Again, I hope Emmett Wolf is healthy, but beating Mason Wright in the semifinals proves that, okay, yeah, he's obviously pretty good to go. And again, I have any issues with the seeds and where I think it was pretty easy to see this with Mucci, McClure having head-to-heads, Wolf having that head-to-head win over Wright, and Jacob Stewart being in that mix as well. So the top 5 here are really solid. Central Valley is another team that, like, this McDonald, like I do the Northwest AA rankings, and I feel like I've seen a lot of Central Valley kids knock off some of their guys. So I really am impressed with some of their Central Valley guys, and see what he does, see what he's able to do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he does with some of the top competition, because 33 is a stronger weight for the WPIAL as far as top heaviness, and
we've seen these other guys hit head to head. We haven't seen McDonald go against some of these bigger guys.
Right. Yeah, and obviously I mentioned at the top, right? Usually they would seed the 3-section champs, and then the runner-ups would be in reverse order. So that way, then you would see a lot of 6/3 and that sort of thing. Well, now they've seeded them. I think partially because they usually seeded AAA, right? So
yes.
The seeds here, I think, make sense, right? Garen McDonald didn't really have the competition that the other guys did, and it was top heavy in the South. So, and you look at the top 8 overall too. I mean, Carter Cadis of Burgestown has had a good season as a freshman.
A very good freshman season.
He's battled McClure and Wolf and Wright a lot. So I would not be surprised if he's in this top 8 here.
Agreed.
It may have been challenging to seed him, just based off of making sure to get guys who are in the finals of other sections in there, but I think he's going to have a good tournament still this weekend. 139 pounds in the East, Julian Bertucci of Burrell. He was your champion, an 8-5 win over Aiden Burford of Highlands in the final. In the North, Matt Dana of Quaker Valley, he was your champ. And in the South, Lucas Barr of McGuffey was the champion. 139, Lucas Barr is the top seed. Matt Dana of Quaker Valley, number 2. Julian Bertucci of Burrell, number 3. Aiden Burford of Highlands, number 4.
I mean, and these first 4 are pretty solid, right? We know how good Lucas Barr, Matt Dana, Bertucci, and Burford are. And I
Even throw
hadn't.
Brett Clement too. He's not bad as well.
No, Brett. I almost like him and Beatrice. I feel like are the same person, the same wrestler. They have very similar results, very similar records. They wrestle a really tough schedule, so it's you get to see them against some of the top guys. So yeah, I like Klim as well. But all I'm saying is these top four are very solid, right? Lucas Barr has been very impressive from the first tournament. I saw him at Panther Holiday all the way up through the team tournament. Matt Dana, same thing. So yeah, this one I feel like was pretty easy to seed. There weren't a lot of matches within the sectional tournaments that, other than Bertucci and Burford, like that was a good one, and even the semifinal there, Clem and Burford, that was a good match too. So, but again, I like the fact that the committee doesn't like they're not just looking at the sections and saying, well, the section champs and then the seconds, then the thirds, like they're going through and saying, okay, this section's clearly weighted, right? So I thought they did a really good job here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. 145 pounds, Lucas Boyer of Elizabeth Forward. He was your champion. In the North, Owen Lehue of Knock was your champ. And in the South, Victor Bonus of McGuffey went in as the number 3 seed,
Yep.
but gets wins over Ryder Go of Southside and Caleb Patton of Washington to win the Southern section. And that gives him the number 3 seed in this. Lucas Boyer of Elizabeth Forward, number 1. Owen Lehue of Knock, number 2. Bonus at number 3. And Caleb Patton of Washington, number 4.
Yeah, and so this is a lot different than 39, where I feel like you had very clear expectations of what to see. Lucas Boyer is the only one that was head and shoulders ahead of the rest in the WPIAL. He's a returning state qualifier as a sophomore, has had a really good season, and I'll tell you this: when you look at Antonio Perkins from Valley, who's just a freshman, he had a couple close matches to get to the finals, but he's had a really good year. Had a fall in the first match and then beat the second seed in sudden victory, then won 15-10 before getting pinned by Boyer. I would keep an eye out on him. I think he probably could have been the 5. Again, if I'm nitpicking, I feel like he probably could have been the 5 seed, but that's just splitting hairs. I really think with Lehue, Bonus, Patton, and Reynolds and Perkins, it's kind of a crapshoot between all 4 of those guys. I really don't think that, or 5 of those guys, I really don't think there's a clear favorite per se, because Lucas Boyer's just kind of been the dominant guy here. Victor Bonus, though, I will say Victor Bonus has had that was a really good section. I was not expecting him to come away with a championship. I thought Ryder Go had been wrestling very well, and I thought Patton as well, going to 45. I still thought he may have been better off at 52, to be honest with you. But yeah, at 45, it's Lucas Boyer and then kind of everyone else fighting to see what the pecking order is. I wouldn't be surprised to see, though, a Perkins finish top 3. I really wouldn't. He has the ability. I think it's just a matter of he's a freshman and anything can happen.
Yeah, I think that's a lot. I mean, you look at any of those guys, this top 8 is going to be interesting to see how they finish. And you got a guy, you mentioned Ryder Go, he's unseeded.
Yeah.
3rd in the section, has that one loss to Victor Bonus, who ends up being the champ in the section. And now he goes unseeded in this, out of the top 8 anyway. So it'll be interesting to see where he's placed in the bracket too. Could he pull an upset or two? So it's going to be interesting to see.
And this is what I feel like is so important is outside of Boyer, the only other regional qualifier from the WPIAL in the top 8, or excuse me, just in the WPIAL in general, not because Go's not in the top 8, was Ryder Go. That was it. Him and Lucas Boyer are the only guys who have ever advanced to regionals, at least last year, because Bonus did qualify his freshman year in 2023. So, but you look at that and like, again, just it's unproven. You just don't know. There's a lot of these guys are going to be doing this for the first time. So whether they're freshmen or just because they haven't gotten there before.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be a dogfight to see how they finish, beyond beyond. So see how it goes here coming this weekend. 152 pounds, Mason Horwat of Derry. He was your champion in the East. In the North, Gavin McRae of Freedom was your champ. And in the South, Jonah Early of Fraser was your champion. You look at the top seeds at 152. Mason Horwat of Derry, number one. Jonah Early of Fraser, number two. Gavin McRae of Freedom, number three. Braxton Carr of Laurel, number four.
Yeah, and it's I feel like when you look at 52, Horwat and Erdley are clearly the top two. I think you can probably make an argument that 3 and 4 and 5 could be a little bit different, but overall, when you look at the results from the sections, to be honest with you, I was pretty surprised that Early was only 1-0 over Logan Noyes. Noyes
Yeah.
beat up Newman in the semifinals, so I like the fact that they got him in the top 8. I think that performance alone was deserving of it. I also like the fact that McRae had such a statement win, because that was a really good section there with him, Dimert, and Carr. And Carr has a win over Newman, and McRae came out and just took it to him, right? So I almost feel like, McRae, it could, obviously I like him at the 3, but Zanella, like, he's another one that I feel like could potentially have an argument to be in that top 3 or 4, as opposed to where he's at. He had a dominating win over Wiley from Riverview, and then lost to Horwat by forfeit, but he could be in that mix as well. But again, it's no complaints here. I think McRae is, with that winning that section, he's deserving of the 3rd seed. I just think you could make an argument that 3, 4, 5 could be a little bit different.
160 pounds. The champ in the East was Ewan Olson of Derry. In the North, Gabe Lilly of Elwood City is your champ. And in the South, Owen Ivsick of Bentworth, your champ. One surprising result, though, Jeff. Alex Palco of Jefferson Morgan, a 6-1 win in the semifinals over Ryan Salashi of Fraser. That match in particular really stuck out to me more than any other, probably, in Double A. And you look at the seeds now for Double A, Gabe Lilly of Elwood City at the top at number 1, Owen Ivsick of Bentworth, number 2, Ewan Olson of Derry, number 3, Alex Palco, Jefferson Morgan, number 4, and then there is Salashi at number 5.
And what did I say last weekend is that he was a freshman with not a lot of wrestling under his belt this year. We didn't know what we were going to expect, and what we were going to get, whether he was healthy, whether he was had his lungs, or whatever it may be. We just weren't really sure what we were going to get. But I did not have it on my bingo card that he was going to beat Ryan Salashi, who's a 2-time state qualifier and a very solid wrestler as a senior. But after all that was definitely the biggest upset or biggest result that I noticed in Double A. But after that result, I think the seeds are exactly how they should be, with Lilly 1, Ivchik 2, Olson 3, and Palco getting rewarded for that at 4, because that win over Sleshy that was huge for him. Gabe Lilly has that win over Ivchik, so that's why he's where he's at. Olson has had a really good season at Derry this year. He was at West Mifflin the last 2 years. And Cheney Lewis Jr., man, I mean, the Neighborhood Academy they only have a handful of guys. And he's been a really, really good youth wrestler coming up through. So maybe we don't see him as much. I got to see him at the Midwinter Mayhem. He's going to be a problem. I really like him. But this is a really good, solid weight for the WPIAL. I think you could really see a lot of these top 8 guys pushing to try to qualify for Hershey in a couple weeks.
Yeah, one of the deepest weights for sure.
For sure.
And one of those weights too, I mean, you're having great seasons from Lilly, Ivchik, but Olson's having a great year. Palco, Alec, by the way, I think I said Alec Palco. But Salashi, I mean, he's a WPIAL runner-up last year, and he's a 5 seed. So
I know.
that just tells you how good this weight is, and how entertaining, I think, not only a couple of those quarterfinals are going to be, but also the semis as well. Probably want to be the best ones to see as far as semis go, in my opinion, at 160 pounds. 172, Isaac Lasinski of Burrell. He is your champ. At in the east, in the north, Marcus Ritchie of Quaker Valley is your champ, and in the south, it was Jackson Angelo of Fraser. Angelo gets the number 1 seed, Lasinski of Burrow in number 2, Ritchie Quaker Valley 3, and Landon Delara of Southmoreland number 4.
Yeah, I mean, this was as chalk as you can get. I think all the ones and twos won in their sections. If I'm looking at it correctly, I don't think there was anyone that got in that wasn't a 1 or 2 seed here. So, and everything kind of went as expected. Lisinski dominated a really good Landon Delora, and Richie dominated Lindsay, and Angelo was able to pin Lehue. Who had a good win over Teagarden. I will say that. Teagarden ended up in third place there. But this was a very easy weight class. You have Angelo, who's a returning state medalist, Lasinski, who has had a really good season for Burrow, and Ritchie is right there. So I feel like this was a very easy weight to seed, and I think they got it right.
189 in the east, Brady Brown of Derry was your champion. In the north, Zeshawn Williams of Freedom was your champ. And in the south, Malachi Peak of Best Center was your champ. Brown of Derry is number 1. Jake Mundorf of Ligonier Valley is number 2. Zeshawn Williams of Freedom, number 3. And Malachi Peak of Best Center at number 4.
Yeah, and 89, while on paper doesn't look like it's super stacked for the WPIAL, because it isn't, because outside of Brown, none of these wrestlers really have much credentials to their names. I still think it's a really good weight for the WPIAL. Malachi Peak has been wrestling very, very well. Beat Slayton Williams 4-1 in the semifinals, then beat Suppler in the finals by major. I think he's been wrestling well. Williams, I thought he's also looked pretty good, but Willis lost the Laurel wrestler from Willis lost in the semifinals to Metz, and then Williams beat him in the finals by fall. So I think when you look at the way that they did it, I'm okay with Mundorf as a second seed, but I will say I thought Peak should have been maybe 3 or 4. Well, he is 4, so I guess I'm not that mad about it. I just think Peak's been wrestling really, really well right now. That's all, and I feel like he's gonna finish higher than where he's at.
Yeah, and Mundorf had a big win over Wyatt Markovich of South Park in the semis to get to the final. Obviously, came up against one of the best in Brady Brown, but yeah, at the end of the day, would love to see Peak at least have a chance to get to the final, as opposed to
that's my argument, is that, like, get him away. He split with Williams. He beat Slayton Williams, and he beat Slayton Williams twice, but he lost by fall. So he and Williams, the last result was him getting pinned by Zeshawn Williams. He had beaten Zeshawn Williams 5-3 the week prior. So, for rankings purposes, I always go off of the last result, so I understand that. But I would say he avenged, like, I think 3 or 4 of his losses that he had early on. He's avenged all of them, including to Zeshawn Williams and Slayton Williams and Dominic Willis. So that's all. But I get it. They've split matches this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, if you really want to peel the onion back, right? Okay, what was the score when that fall happened? Was it close? Because if that's the case, it could have been a fluke fall.
Well, so, and Peak was a regional qualifier last year. Zeshawn Williams wasn't. So that's kind of where I put the bar. But I would rather see him opposite side of Brown.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Even if you put him somewhere else other than 4.
215 pounds, Luke Boylan of Burrell. He was your champ in the east. In the north, Colton Carlson of Laurel was your champ, and in the south, Braden Welsh of Fort Cherry was your champ. The top seeds, Braden Welsh of Fort Cherry at number 1, Carlson of Laurel number 2, Brennan Bressinger of Quaker Valley number 3, Luke Boylan of Burrell number 4.
Yeah, so Welsh seems to be wrestling pretty well at 215, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he missed a beat there, and I don't think he lasted more than a minute and 7 seconds. That was the longest he had to wrestle in the sectional tournament at 215. Um, the biggest takeaway I had was Colton Carlson from Laurel, and he was dominant. 3 falls to win it, including one over Bressinger, who had a good win over Braden Suter of Carlington in the semifinals. So that to me was the deepest one because you had Justin Beck there as well. So that I feel like that was a good win for Carlson, and he got rewarded by that, getting the second seed, which I agree with. Bressner has the last win over Boylan. He split matches with Boylan as well this year. I think Beck could have probably been 7, but again, splitting hairs there. Welsh is clearly the guy, despite moving up a weight class.
285 pounds, your champ in the East, David Sager of Southmoreland. He had himself a tournament coming in as the 3 seed. He ends up winning 7-1 over number 2 seed over Peyton Sham of Mount Pleasant, who actually had the upset over the number 2 seed
Yep.
before beating Parker Cunningham of South Park, the top seed in the finals 4-2. In the North, Henry Barbish of Carlington, he was your champion over Casey Wilson of Laurel, and Colin White of West Green, your champ in the South. The 285 seeds, Colin White of West Green is number 1, Henry Barbish of Carlington, number 2, Casey Wilson of Laurel, number 3, David Sager of Southmoreland, number 4.
Yeah, and based off of the results, I do like the seeds here. White is the clear favorite, having the fact that he was a state qualifier. Barbish's win over Wilson. Wilson, I thought was the second best guy here in the WPIAL, and Barbish obviously said that's not the case. Sager was the guy who really surprised me. I was very high on Parker Cunningham. I think he's had a really good season, but Sager came out and had a really good tournament. So I like that he got rewarded for that. Beating Cunningham in the finals, I thought was huge for him. So we'll see. Colin White is clearly the guy though. So we'll see if anyone can try to knock him off.
Double A starts at Chartiers Valley on Friday at 5 o'clock with the pigtail round of 16 quarters and first round of consolations, and then starts back up on Saturday at 10 a.m. with the second round of consies. Semifinals set for 11:30, and the medal matches will start at 3:30. Again, that's all at Chartiers Valley. Top 8 move on in full wrestlebacks from the round of 16. So that opening pigtail round is single elimination. You lose, you're out. Looking, Jeff, before we jump ahead to AAA and breaking down each weight class, let's first talk a little bit about the girls. They went through their own WPIAL championship from over this past weekend. And getting a chance to watch the finals, Jeff, and call it. There's some really good matches in the finals. Sometimes you see some disparity from among some of the elite wrestlers, but the girls really came to wrestle on this past weekend. And starting at 100 pounds, Kristen Walzer of Montour, she was your champ, a 7-0 win over Blythe Letters of Shaler.
Yeah, Walzer's a stud. She wrestled on the boys team this year, as she did the year prior. She was a state medalist last year, finishing in 6th place. She's down to 100 pounds. Not surprised at all to see her come out and win like she did. But I'll tell you what, Letters is she's going to battle. I think as a freshman, she held her own against Walzer. I mean, you saw the match, you called it. What did she hold her own?
Yeah, no doubt. Honestly, I mean, Walzer got that opening takedown, and I'm pretty sure if memory serves me, he took her to her back, and then after that, it was not much scoring. It was a pretty even keel match after that. So, but Letters is solid. 106 pounds. Your champion was Ella Trehan from Fort Cherry. She was a winner by fall over Malia Ramos of Cannon McMillan.
She had a hell of a tournament. You look at her results, and she had 4 falls, right? This one, Ramos was able to avenge a loss to Riley Maines, gets to the finals, but falls to Trahan, who's had a really good season this year. Yeah, I was impressed with her, and I think Trahan, I think, has a really good chance to do well in not just the regional but the state tournament as well, because you look at it and it's a little bit more wide open. There's a lot of freshmen that are at the top here, but she's a return state qualifier, so she's been there before, unlike some of these other girls that are there for the first time.
112 pounds, Marley Sullivan of Cannon McMillan was a winner by major decision, 14-6 over Kylie Kiesecker of West Mifflin, who was she was unseeded, had the big upset, 5-2 over Trinity Moore of Connellsville in the round of 16. Moore ends up coming all the way back for third place, had to get 5 falls.
Yeah.
All 5 falls, by the way, for Trinity Moore in the consolations were all under a minute to place third. But Kiesecker had a great tournament. After that 5-2 win, a couple of falls in the quarters and semis. And I'll tell you what, if you're looking for a match that was chippy, it was at 112 pounds. Sullivan and Kiesecker,
Really?
they were back and forth, and there was a lot of stoppages and a lot of conversations. This one definitely was pretty chippy.
Listen, I mean, Kiesecker's a stud. I don't know how I know how, because she came in with a 0-0 record because she wrestled on the boys team for West Mifflin. They don't have a girls team, so she wrestled with the boys. She was a really good youth wrestler. She was on our top incoming freshman for our girls ranking coming into the season. And to be honest with you, when I saw the seeds, and I was like, what is she doing there? Like down all the way at towards the end. And I said, she's going to end up knocking off somebody or coming all the way back in the wrestle back. And she ended up being on the same side of Trinity Moore, who herself is a very good wrestler. She was one of the only ones in the bracket that had state PIAA state accolades. She was 5th in the state last year. Solomon, as we know, was a California state medalist, but she was a runner-up in Fargo this past summer. So we know how good she was, but Kiesecker was she took advantage of that win over Moore and made it to the finals. And I don't think she's going to get overlooked next week when she's at the West region.
Yeah, no way is anyone overlooking her after that performance. She definitely was, Solomon was definitely the better wrestler, but some penalty points helped out quite a bit. But I mean, overall, she hung tough against Solomon, and she's gonna be fun to watch here for the next 3 years, including the rest of this postseason for that matter. 118 pounds, Brayley Ireland was your champion. She's from Knox. She won 7-3 over Paige Jocks of Mount Lebanon.
Yeah, I thought Ireland's had a really good season thus far, beating Paige Jocks, who was a state qualifier last year. Ireland was a state qualifier 2 years ago at the My House Girls State Championships. So she's been wrestling really well. So I think you look at some of these other girls there. Ayala from Cannon Mac, Uni had just come back from an injury, and she's able to come back for third after losing to Ireland. I thought that was a gutsy performance by her, especially because she just hasn't had a lot of mat experience this year.
Yeah, and the seeds were a little bit off, I think, just with some girls still wrestling on boys' schedule.
And it's hard to do when you're wrestling 2 different seasons essentially.
Yeah, Ayala, for instance, 4 falls in the consolations to come back for third place. 124 pounds, Anna Duncan of South Park. She was your winner by fall in the finals over Ariana Stratter of Pine Richland. And despite it being a fall, this had to be the most entertaining. I mentioned the chippy one from Kiesecker and Solomon. Duncan and Stratter went back and forth before Duncan ended up getting the fall. It was an entertaining bout.
And you see that a lot with the girls, where it's back and forth, and then a fall inevitably happens. There's so many falls in girls, it's hard to especially for rankings, it's hard to gauge, like, okay, what was the score at the time of the fall, and was there somebody that was clearly more dominant before the fall? Because it's just hard to gauge. But Duncan's a returning state qualifier. She's solid, and with Stratter, she's a freshman, but I think obviously getting that experience. Cunningham was third. And Stratter beat her 8-7 in the semifinals. That had to have been a good match too. So I thought that was a really good win for her as a freshman over a senior in Cunningham.
130, Haley Smarsh of Moon. She looked great in her performance, winning 12-1 in the finals over Sophia Davis of Plum.
And look at where they are in the state rankings currently. Smarsh is 4 and Davis is 5. Smarsh was a state runner-up last year. Davis was 4th in the state. And it sounds to me like it wasn't close, right, Greg? Is that what you're saying, 12-1?
Right. Yep.
You throw in Maddie Fisher, who Davis Tech falled in the semifinals. Maddie Fisher herself was a state place winner 2 years ago. And she comes back for third there. So this was a really good weight class, but Smarsh is – she's on it, man. Remember talking about her last year and saying, like, what a great aim for a wrestler that's coming out and just dominating people. And she made it all the way to the state finals against Aubrey Kraser.
136, Ava Golding of Kiski goes to overtime, but defeats Janiyah Nobles of Connellsville. I can't remember the exact number, Jeff. I want to say it's either 9 or 10 as far as this is the number of times they've wrestled in their career over the last 3 years. Golding has won them all. Yeah. I can't remember if it's 9 or 10, but this one was the closest.
Yeah.
This is the closest.
Yeah, and you feel like I almost kind of thought in my head, like this was going to be the time when it happened, and for Golding's sake, it hopefully it's not the next weekend. But these two girls are both very, very talented. Golding's was a third in the state last year, number 2 in the state currently ranked. Nobles is right behind her at number 3. She's a 2-time state medal, so was 8th at the My House and then 7th last year in Hershey. Alfera from Laurel was the one that, I mean, she's really good. Nobles only beat her 7-6 in the quarterfinal. She comes back for third. I have her ranked number 5 in the state, and she's a junior and hasn't made it to Hershey yet, but this is going to turn out to be a really good weight, and there's a very good chance Golding and Nobles will hit again the following weekend.
142 pounds, Abigail Dolanch of Avella. She was your champ, winner by fall over Grace Nasman of Upper St. Clair in the final. Dolanch was dominant. She didn't even get out of the first period, and getting 3 falls to win the title.
Yeah, I mean, Dolanch is a sophomore. Did you give her a shout out? Being from
Avella Eagles, man.
Let's
Absolutely. Avella had a great weekend.
They did have a good weekend. Dolanch is a returning state medal. She was 6th last year, so not super surprising. But Naismith has had a good season for Upper St. Clair. Has knocked off a couple big name upperclassmen, so that's why she's currently ranked number 6 in the state. But yeah, Dolanch she was the one. So shout out to Vela Eagles.
That's right. 148 pounds, Josephine Dolman of Norwin. She was also dominant. 4 falls, all in the first period, including a fall in the finals over Evangeline Gray of Cannon McMillan.
I mean, was she the most dominant in the finals, would you say? I mean, you only saw
honestly,
her for
between
24 seconds.
Her and Dolanch were both equally impressive. I mean, just both of them were like, okay, yeah, they're 2 of the best in the state.
I mean, Dolman's a stud. Like she's beaten a lot of really good girls. She's beaten Casey Mook. She's beaten Plummer last year. She's had some really big time results, and she's only a junior, 5th in the state last year. I think that's going to be greatly improved this year. I definitely expect her to be top 3 in the state. But Gray's also not bad. I mean, look how she's a returning state qualifier, ranked number 10 in the state, and it only lasted 24 seconds. So that shows you how good Dolman is.
155, Carson Champion of Norwin. She was your winner in overtime, 11-8 over Sophia Folks of North Allegheny.
Yeah, so didn't know what we were going to get from Sophia Folks. She had been injured. Last year she missed all of last year for an injury. She was fifth in the state as a freshman during the My House State tournament. And to be honest with you, didn't know if she was even going to be able to compete at this event. And she did. She got 3 falls into the to the finals, and it sounds like she was neck and neck with champion. Greg, what did you you notice about that match?
Yeah, it was a close match, and if memory serves me, I think that Folks was up, and then Champion came back late, and to tie it up, and it was a back and forth match. Honestly, it's one of those ones. I think if they wrestled 10 times, Champion may win 6, Folks wins 4, or vice versa. I mean, it's a good battle between these two.
And Folks had a good win in the semis against Codalise from Laurel. She's a state
Right.
qualifier last year, and that was a good win for her.
170, Octavia Walker of Norwin. She was your champion and winner by fall in the finals over Virginia Smith of Avella. Smith had a big win in the semis over Audrey Calgaro of Cannon McMillan. She was losing in that match, but came back to get a fall.
Yeah, so of the girls' results, that was probably one of the biggest ones for me was Virginia Smith over Calgaro, who was third in the state last year in Hershey. Missed some time earlier this year with an injury from soccer, but I feel like she still. Did you say she was leading at the time of the fall, or what? What was the?
Yeah, she was. I want to say 10-3 isn't the score that's sticking in my head, but
Okay,
yeah, she
yeah.
was up, but pretty good against Smith, and Smith got the fall.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Calgaro's still trying to get her footing and her grounding coming back to the mat. But Walker is really good, right? Walker's a state qualifier from a year ago. I think Calgaro, though, the one thing I worry about is she's going to get better as the weeks go on, right? So she's going to peak probably in Hershey, which is bad news for the rest of the field.
190 pounds, Elena Clausen of Plum, your champion, 3-0 over Ariana Bernard of Valley.
Yeah, and Bernard's had a good season this year. She's never made it to the state tournament before this. And I thought that was a really good performance by her to beat Natalie Rush, who was a state qualifier, or excuse me, a state runner-up last year. So you have a girl who's never made it to either the My House or the PIAA state girls tournament, and she comes out and she beats the returning state runner-up before falling to class. And so that was probably one of the bigger. She had lost to Rush. I want to say this year she lost to Rush. So to avenge that and then to make it to the finals, I thought was a good one. Clausen, though, she's a returning state 6th place finisher. Kind of expected her to do pretty well.
235, Zoe Murphy of Southmoreland. She was impressive. 3 falls in all in the first period, and this one in the finals over Brooklyn Pearson of Woodland Hills.
I think we said that last week that she was head and shoulders above the rest of the field here, returning state qualifier, and I think she's going to have a pretty good West region in the state tournament.
So the girls coming up, I think they have this weekend off.
This weekend off. Yep. This weekend off before the West.
Yep, and then they'll have their regional tournament before the state tournament coming up. AAA, they had their sections as well this past weekend, and they're coming up on their WPIAL tournament. And let's go into it. Obviously, the East was the most packed, as far as stacked, I guess you could say, with a lot of these weight classes. So probably have the most commentary there. But at 107 pounds, Zach Rehack of Thomas Jefferson, he was your champion. Bo Fennick of Franklin Regional defeats Tommy Gretz of Connellsville in the semis to get to that final, but Rehack your champ in the East. In the North, it was Bennett Ferraro who had a big win. Ferraro from Pine Richland, 5-2 over Anthony Jones of Shaler. And in the South, Nick McGarity, 6-3 over Michael Johnson of West Allegheny. Your top 4, Jeff, here at 107. Nick McGarity of Peters Township, 1. Michael Johnson of West Allegheny, 2. Zach Rehack of Thomas Jefferson, 3. And Bo Fennick of Franklin Regional, number 4.
Yeah, so right out of the gate, I definitely have some issues with the seedings at 107 pounds. McGarrity's a clear one, right? We know that being a returning state medalist. But I said the champion of the Eastern section between Rehak Fennick or Tommy Gretz, that whoever won that section was going to be the second seed, just because that was by far the toughest section. And Rehak's a regional qualifier. Tommy Gretz is a guy who at one point was nationally ranked. Fenix has been right there as high as number 3 in the state. They go with Johnson, not taking anything away from Johnson. I like Michael Johnson. He's had a really good season, but he didn't win his section, and he has split matches this season with Thomas. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, or excuse me, Jones. I said Thomas, Anthony Jones. I feel like Rehak had the greatest section result of all the weights here. I think you have to reward him by giving him the second seed. Really what it's going to set up is Tommy Gretz, and because Gretz falls down to the 7 seed. So he's probably going to be in a position where he may end up seeing and trying to knock off whether it's Johnson, Rehak again. So I don't know, but I just think you had to have given the Eastern section guy, especially Rehak being a returning regional qualifier and a sectional champion. There's nothing in Johnson's resume that says he should be ahead of Rehak. So that I think was a mistake. But outside of that, I like where Fenix at. I think Ferraro has had a really good end of the season, and being that he's a freshman, beating Anthony Jones, who was a regional medalist last year, I think that earned where he's at. That gives credence to it because you beat one of the only regional qualifiers from a year ago, regional place winners from a year ago. McGarrity and Jones were the only guys from the WPIAL that were regional qualifiers last year. So that I agree with. But Johnson, I just wouldn't have had number 2.
Do you like Bryce Thomas at number 5, and do you think Bennett Ferraro should have been higher?
So yeah, I mean, Thomas has a loss. He's had a couple losses. He lost to Jones. He lost to Fennick. He lost to Johnson. He also lost to Nick Savannah too. So I feel like that's enough. That's enough losses to not put you in the number 5 spot. I definitely, and I didn't want to go too far down because we're already at like 45 minutes, an hour. I definitely would have had, so how I would have seeded it would have been Nick McGarrity 1, Rehak 2, Fennick 3, Gretz 4. I think that's fair. Johnson 5, Ferraro 6 is how I would have done it. And then Jones 7th, yeah. And then Bryce Thomas 8. So, I mean, it's all going to come out in the wash, but I just, and to be honest with you, all I care about is getting the right guys to advance to the West region, right? Getting the guys that, and I look, Nick Savannah, like he's had a really good 2 years. I think he has to have over 60 wins already in 2 years. Like he's really good. He was just in a tough section. He could find himself in there above a guy like Bryce Thomas. So I don't love where Bryce Thomas is, but I don't love where Michael Johnson is. Again, I think you see the Eastern section as they should be, right? They're 3 guys that are top 5 in the state. You should probably have them where they belong, but it is what it is. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind as we go through this, top 7 out of the WPIAL go to the regional tournament. So just
but there's a caveat there. There is a caveat. There's other regions, or excuse me, other districts that, so for example, the District 10 champion at 107 pounds, he did not have to compete against anybody. He had to weigh in and he won a district title. So it sounds to me like there are going to be some weights where the WPIAL may fill the gap in if there's not enough wrestlers from a certain district. And District 10 is one of them.
Very interesting. So you're saying there could be wrestlers that could go instead of 7.
100%. Yep.
114 pounds, Nico Capusta of Hempfield. He is back and he wins in the final 9-7 over Dylan Barrett of Penn Trafford for the section title. In the North, Brady Rohaley from North Hills. He is your champion. And in the South, at 114, it is Lucas Carson of West Allegheny. Capusta of Hempfield area, number 1. Barrett of Penn Trafford, number 2. Colton Klippa of Norwin, number 3. Leaf Circo of Ringgold, number 4.
Nico Capusa had the best weekend out of any of the WPIAL wrestlers in AAA. I mean, he really turned it on. Being that he came back so late, I mean, think what did he have before coming into the postseason? I think he had 4 matches, something like that. And to come into such a stacked 114-pound weight class, him and Dylan Barrett have had a lot of history, right? Hempfield and Penn Trafford not too far from each other. They've wrestled a bunch. They know each other. Dylan Barrett's had a really good season this year, but Nico Capusta came out and made a statement, right? I was very, very impressed with his performance here, beating Circo from Ringgold, who was a tough freshman, beating Klippa 4-3 in a just a dogfight, right? But to beat Dylan Barrett, who had just beaten Zach Franks, Colangelo lost to Franks. Franks had that win at the team state tournament. This was an absolutely stacked weight class, and Capusta coming out on top clearly deserved the number 1 seed here. So it's just really nice to see. You felt really bad for him not having. I didn't know if he was going to come back at all this season. He had been out for so long, and for him to come back and get a section title in a very deep weight was very impressive.
Yeah, and we talked about this section being so deep. How about the WPIAL, the top 6 seeds? So every wrestler who advanced out of the Eastern section at 114 are the top 6 seeds in the WPIAL. And you could even make mention Robert Cordova, who lost in overtime to Colangelo to not even advance. If they could have taken 7, they probably would have seeded him 7th. That's
I would have seeded him 7th, and I absolutely would have seeded him 7th in the rankings. That's where he belongs. We still have him ranked, right there ahead of like Rohaley, LaQuatra, and Carson. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and he misses his chance to wrestle out of in the regional tournament because he can't make it out of the very difficult section. 121 in the East, Leo Joseph of Latrobe, 4-2 winner in overtime over Nolan Rice of Connellsville for the section title. Evan Schomburg of North Allegheny, your champion in the North. And in the South, Thomas Bencho of West Allegheny, your champion. 121, your top 4 seeds, Leo Joseph of Latrobe 1, Nolan Rice of Connellsville 2, Bencho of West Allegheny 3, and Giano Gardner of Cannon McMillan number 4.
Yeah, so the big result here was in the South section where Giano Gardner from Cannon Mac upset Pierce Reinhardt from Bethel Park. He pinned him. That was a huge win for Gardner. Gardner also beat Brock Dennison from South Fayette 9-2 in the quarterfinals. Banco was able to come away with the title here as a freshman. Again, a lot like Alec Palco we just haven't seen a whole lot of him. 19 matches on the year, but he obviously is wrestling very well at this time. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do in the WPIAL tournament. Schomburg as well, I thought had a good weekend. Had a forfeit in the semifinals, but knocked off Warson pretty dominating fashion, 11-3. So that to me was a really good match. Joseph beating Rice. Those two are going to see each other likely again, probably the next couple weeks. So I think the seeds are where they should be, right? Joseph and Rice are the clear 2. Banco having won that section title. I think Schomburg has a loss to Gardner, so I can see where they're at there. Reinhardt, Warson, Emma. I don't have any complaints here. But it's gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, just missing Landon Sidden, right? Just
feels
a little bit different without him there. 127 pounds, Mikey Ruane of Franklin Regional, he was your champion. In the North, Santino Sloboda of Butler, dominant 3 fall and 2 techs to win it in the North. And Dom Canali of Trinity, he was your champion in the South. Top 4 seeds, Sloboda of Butler, Canali of Trinity 2, Ruan of Franklin Regional 3, Carter Putt of Indiana, number 4.
Yeah, and so 27's a really good weight. Sloboda, obviously, coming up from 21 is a main factor in that reason. But you look at like Putt, Canali, Ron, Tolliver, even like Evan Sala, they're all kind of in that same mix. Ron from Franklin Regional had a big win over Tolliver because they actually wrestled a year ago in the regional tournament for 7th and 8th place. Tolliver beat him that time, and Ron comes back and beats him this time around. Canali's been a 2-time regional 5th place finisher. He's been so damn close every time, every year, right? He's a junior now. I like where he's at. I like him as the 2. I like Ron as a regional. Like, I can see why they did it, right? Sloboda, a state medalist, Canali and Ron, both regional medalists a year ago. Carter Putt was a regional medalist 2 years ago. I think Carter Putt, you could make an argument that Carter Putt should have been like a 3 instead of a 4. Now he's all not on the same side as Sloboda, and I hate to say it doesn't matter because you just need to advance to the next weekend, but a lot of times this is not going to matter because they're going to be fine in the regional tournament. So a lot of depth here. I like John DeLuca and Colton Fisher and Sala where they're at there. So I think it was a good weight.
133 pounds, Luke Willishell of Latrobe, your champion out of the East. In the North, Nico Finella of Indiana, your champion. And in the South, Collier Hartman of Canna McMillan, your champion. He beat Cale Yannick of Moon 7-5 in the final. Your top seeds at 133, Willishaw of Latrobe at 1, Finella of Indiana 2, Hartman of Canna McMillan 3, and Chase Smith of Franklin Regional number 4.
Yeah, this was an easy weight class to seed because these guys have all seen each other before. Willishaw and Finella, both state medalists, and Hartman being a state qualifier. Chase Smith has a win over Yannick. So that to me, the 5 was pretty easy. And then you look at Snatchko and Stedford and Connolly, like they've all hit. This is a good weight class. And Willishaw and Finella are on a collision course because you look at what Willishaw did to Chase Smith. It was a tech fall in 3 minutes, 51 seconds. Hartman had a look. Yannick is he doesn't score a ton of points, but he's close with everybody essentially. And Hartman definitely had his hands full with him 7-5. So I would really like to see a Chase Smith and Collier Hartman match because obviously being a 3-4 that could happen. I think that can go either way.
139, Kai Vioma of Connellsville. He was your champion in the East. In the North, Dom Ferraro of Pine Richland was your champion. In the South, TJ Allison of Trinity was your champion. 139 seeds, top goes to Dom Ferraro of Pine Richland, Vioma of Connellsville 2, Allison of Trinity 3, and Dyden Soto of Bell Vernon number 4.
Yeah, and you look at Tom Ferraro. I mean, yeah, it wasn't the deepest of sections, but he pinned Zach Hill in 32 seconds. And Dustin Kerr was a second seed who was a regional medalist last year. He finishes in 3rd. So Dom Ferraro did not wrestle longer than 52 seconds at 139 pounds. He's undefeated. He's a state qualifier from a year ago. I'm totally fine with where he's at the top seed here. Him and Kai Vioma, I think. Vioma is also returning state qualifier. I have them switch in the rankings, but that's really a coin flip in my opinion. I really hope to see these two go head to head because Ferrara's been wrestling so damn well. And Vioma's gotten so many good matches this year. They just wrestle such a tough schedule. And look what he was able to do to Soto from Bell Vernon. I mean, he won a very good section, right? Beating Soto, who had just beaten Owen Campbell. You also had Klingensmith in there. You had Sarnick in there. It's crazy. If you look at the results, like Sarnik beats Klingensmith 11-0 in the championship round, and then the consolation round, Klingensmith beats him 2-1 in tiebreaker. Like, if I get beat by somebody 11-0, there's not a chance in hell I'm in that same tournament. I'm going to be able to come back and beat them. It's just mentally, that's like just I guess it's just a different game, right? It's crazy how it all pans out. But 39, the seeds, I think, with TJ Allison getting that win, he's a returning state qualifier. Having him at 3 is makes perfect sense. Soto at 4, I like it. Yeah, it's. But you look, Klingensmith's an 8. That could have been Sarnik. Sarnik beat the 8th seed 11-0, but then lost to him in tiebreakers the last time they wrestled.
Yeah, it goes back to what we've been talking about, how, the scoring now, right? If you hit a 7-point move in the first period, now all of a sudden you're thinking, "Damn, I'm down 7-0. I'm gonna have to come back," and
Right.
you're wrestling out of your style, and then you go back, brand new match, 0-0, and then you can keep a little bit tighter. So that those things, I mean, it's hard to say a lot of times now. Like, just because you got a major last time doesn't mean you're not in it the next match. 145 pounds in the East, Julian Ruggieri of Connellsville was your champion. Wrestled Max Firestein again. Firestein, excuse me. Beats him 8-6 in the final. In the North, Case Chop of Butler was your champion. And in the South, Ramil Islamov of Baldwin, your champion. With a winner by tech fall over Ethan Higgins of Bethel Park in the final.
Yeah.
Islamov is your number 1, and Higgins of Bethel Park your number 2. Case Chop of Butler number 3, Ruggieri number 4. He and Firestein are likely to wrestle again, as they're the 4-5.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it any differently. Even despite the fact that there's that tech fall difference between Islamov and Higgins. Higgins has a win over Chop this year. Chop's a returning state qualifier. Higgins is a 2-time regional medalist. So, yeah, this was a very, again, just based off the results, a very easy weight to seed, because Islamov is a returning state medalist, and Higgins has that head-to-head win over Chop. Ruggieri beating Firestein for, the second or third time there. How about Devin Junko? He comes up from 39 because TJ Allison goes down, and Junko's now the 6th seed at 145. I thought he had a really good tournament. Mason Calgaro as well. I thought, he battled. He's gotten better as the year goes on. But there's some guys that aren't seated there that could make some noise. Max Romani, Liam Hine from Mars, who kind of had a slide in the last couple of weeks there. But overall, 45 is just a really deep weight class. Even with TJ Allison going down to 39, it's still very deep.
152, Maddox Shaw of Thomas Jefferson, your champ. He beats Evan Petrovich of Connellsville 11-4 in the final. Griffin Reed of North Allegheny, your champ in the North, and Darius McMillan of Peters Township, your champ in the South. Shaw of Thomas Jefferson 1, Petrovich of Connellsville 2, McMillan of Peters Township 3, and Reed of North Allegheny number 4.
Yeah, and obviously, when you look at Shaw and Petrovich, they're 1 and 2 in the state, and that just shows you how really good Maddox Shaw is. There's a reason why he was at one time ranked number 1 in the nation, and is basically universally top 5 in the nation at 152 pounds. But him and Petrovich, I really like that. Look, when you look at the weight class in the I always forget the section, the South section. They got to keep these sections, either number them or it's just it's every damn year it's confusing to say the section with these teams. How about that? Darius McMillan had a hell of a tournament because this was the deepest weight class by far. You had Derek Warstall from USC, who he beat by tech fall in the semifinals. But on the bottom half, look at how deep this was. You had Cole Gibbons and Luke Dunlop from South Fayette. Both of these guys are state qualifiers from a year ago. Gibbons pins Dunlop in the semifinals, and then McMillan beats him 4-1. So I love the fact that they did McMillan 3, and then I'm okay with Reed being 4 and Gibbons and Dunlop there. I probably would have had, based off of Reed's, I probably would have had Reed lower than where he's at. He has a loss to McMillan. He lost to a guy from Northampton, Chase Grabfelder, who's good, just not the best. So I think Gibbons and Dunlop being state qualifiers, I would have put them ahead of Reed. Even Cole Doppelhauer too. He's a state qualifier. So I probably would have put him ahead of Reed. But I mean, look, they have to wrestle the matches. So, but Reed definitely got a good seed.
160 pounds. Lonzie Vilma of Connellsville, your champ. You beat Braden White of Thomas Jefferson 11-6 in the final. In the north, Kellen Buggy of North Allegheny, your champ. And in the south, Liam Costa of Moon, your champion. Vioma of Connellsville at 1, White of Thomas Jefferson 2, Costa of Moon 3, Buggy of North Allegheny 4.
Yeah, and this was the match that I had been waiting to see was Lonzie Vielma and Braden White. Those two had not hit. They had a lot of very similar opponents. It was an 11-6 match. It was a very competitive match. But you also had Christian Lowther there as well. And Vielma was able to tech fall him. Lowther comes back for third. So that to me was a really good weight class in that section. Buggy, I wasn't surprised to see him come away at the championship. That wasn't a very deep weight class for him. Liam Costa, on the other hand, he had a huge win over Brock Evans, who also had a huge win over Rook Smith in the semifinals. So this to me was like, okay, this sorted out a lot, right? The pecking order was well established now that you had Costa winning that weight class, Evans upsetting Rook Smith. But when you look at the seeds, I think they did it right in the sense that Vielma and White are clear 1 and 2. Costa winning that section should be 3. You could make the argument that Evans and Smith should be ahead of Buggy. But 4 or 5, it's not the end of the world. Rook Smith at the 6, you're like, being a returning state qualifier, you maybe want to see him a little bit higher. But Buggy is a 3-time regional qualifier and obviously won a not so deep section, but he still won it, right? And you look at some of his results this year. He's had a couple good wins, but it's just, yeah, you're splitting hairs again.
172, Bodie Marlowe of Thomas Jefferson. He was your champ in the East. In the North, Mario Hutcherson of Kiski area, your champion. And in the South, Devin McCauley of Mount Lebanon came in as the number 5 seed, but comes away with a section title. And your seeds is Bodie Marlowe of Thomas Jefferson at 1, Hutcherson of Kiski area number 2, Carter Morvay of North Hills number 3, and Caleb Kinsey of Armstrong number 4.
Boy, Mario Hutcherson's really he's distancing himself from the rest of the field here, right? He's really looking good. Just look at the route that he took to win a section title. Beat Caleb Kinsey from Armstrong, who's a very solid sophomore. Tech followed there, and then you had Mac Miller, Dom Finella, and Carter Morvay from North Hills. So Carter Morvay may be one of the most improved wrestlers in the WPIAL overall. Morvay beats Mac Miller 4-2, and then Hutcherson tech falls him in this first period. Like him and Bodie Marlowe is just going to be a war. I really expect that to happen. I don't think there's anyone that's going to come in between those two. I will say McCauley, that was a very wide open weight class, but for him to win it, that was obviously a pretty cool thing to see. And you look at the seeds, Marlowe, Hutcherson, again, clear 1 and 2. Morvay, Kinsey, they've hit head-to-head. Sepulak from Plum has that win over Miller. McCauley winning the section title. I think this was a very easy way to seed it here, and I agree with it.
There's going to be a lot of great finals matches coming up here, and we're going to have a couple here we're going to talk about in a little bit. But if there was one finals match that I'm most looking forward to, Jeff, it's Marlowe and Hutcherson.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't really get to see Hutcherson at the Powerade, right? He ended up getting sick and not able to compete after only a match. And, Bodie Marlowe is obviously his stock has just continued to rise over
Big
the last
time.
couple of years. And, obviously one of the top guys in the nation. Just to see those two, a senior against a freshman, I don't know. In the way they both perform, right? Like Hutcherson just tech followed the number 3 and the number 4 seeds in the section tournament, and in
Right.
doing so, like you said, without even breaking a sweat. So I'm just really excited. If there's a finals match, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to expect, but to me, fireworks could happen. It's this one here at 72.
100%. I agree with you. And, the common opponent here is Brian Hurd from Abington Heights. Now, Hutcherson wrestled him at our event, True Power, lost to Hurd. That was a long time ago. That was back in October. Then, if you remember, Marlowe wrestled Hurd in like a 22-14 match at the Midwinter Mayhem. He was down. He was down like what 10-0, 11-0, something like that, and stormed back. I agree, man. Fireworks are going to happen, and I can't wait for it to happen. It's going to be a hell of a match.
189 pounds, Hunter Snyder of Latrobe. He was your champion in the East. In the North, Mark Gray of Kiski area was your champ. And in the South, Jake Stevenson of Waynesburg, your champion. Seeds at 189, Hunter Snyder of Latrobe, number 1, Mark Gray of Kiski area, number 2, Jake Stevenson of Waynesburg, number 3, and Nez Green of Pittsburgh Central Catholic, number 4.
Yeah, so Hunter Snyder, went out and did what he was supposed to do. He dominated Tech Fall over LeBrier. So I wouldn't look past the fact that he beat a really good Zach LeBrier there. LeBrier beat Henry Patz in the semifinals there. Before that, Patz comes back for third. And I like Mark Gray, man. I'll tell you what, like he can pin basically anybody, and he can tech fall just about anybody. I mean, let's not forget he tech falled Brady Brown at the Powerade tournament. So Mark Gray is when he's on, he's on. Nez Green is no slouch, and he pinned him in the first period. Green beat Hard Tongue from NA. That's a tough out for him. Beat him 10-7. And Jacob Stevenson, another one kind of like Kapusta, who hadn't been in the lineup very much this year and was a regional medalist last year. Him being back and ready to go, him at 189, I'm excited to see where he ends up. I think Snyder and Gray, Gray was a state medalist 2 years ago. Snyder was a state medalist last year. I think them at 1 and 2 clearly makes sense. I think Stevenson, where he's at, makes perfect sense as well, being the fact that he was a state qualifier, a regional medalist last year. So, yeah, this is a fun weight class. But Hunter Snyder seems to be like the guy. It's just whether Mark Gray can. Who knows? Maybe Mark Gray will attack him or pin him. You never know. Crazier things have happened.
215 pounds in the East, and I don't think anybody expected this result, Jeff. Elijah Brown of Bell Vernon by tech fall over Jake Conroy of Ringgold, avenging a loss from earlier in the season. 15-0 in 2 minutes and 43 seconds.
Yep.
In the North, Cooper Roskowski of Kiski area, a 7-5 win over Roman Thompson of Central Catholic in the final. And in the South, Braden Collins of Cannon McMillan was your champion, 6-1 over Hunter Goals of Bethel Park, who had a big win in overtime over Roan Tustin of Waynesburg in the semi. Woo. Elijah Brown of Bell Vernon, you're number 1. Jake Conroy of Ringgold, number 2. Cooper Roskowski of Kiski area, number 3. And Roman Thompson of Pittsburgh Central Catholic, number 4.
And that's how they're going to be in the state. So you look at the state rankings at 215. That's how they're going to be in the state. Brown 1, Conroy 2, Roskowski 3, Thompson 4. So, yeah, man, I was not expecting. I was expecting it to be a good match, like it was the first time they wrestled, Brown and Conroy. And instead, Brown takes him down, turns him, then turns him twice in the second period, and it's over. Like I just that's it. Like it was like so anticlimactic. You take him down, turn him, it's over. And that's a guy who's going to Cornell, right? Jake Conroy is a Fargo All-American going to Cornell, returning state medalist, and you tech followed him in the second period. So yeah, I mean these guys could wrestle 2, 3, or 3 more times potentially. And it could be very different each time. But Roskowski beat Roman Thompson. Thompson had previously been undefeated. That's a good win for him. That's a, you look in the state rankings again, that's a 3 versus a 4 in the state. So this isn't like, a regional qualifier against a returning state medalist. This was a really good matchup just in a section. So Rostkowski, I think, had a good tournament. I think really the surprise, not saying it's a surprise to me, but Braden Collins has just wrestled really well for Cannon Mac, and he's a very light 215 pounder. He's given up some weight, but he's going out there and just beating some really good guys. Roan Tustin, probably not as healthy as he wants to be, losing to goals and then forfeiting out. But look, he's a guy who was a state qualifier last year at heavyweight. And now he is, he's seated. Is he unseated? Yeah, he's unseated at the,
Seated, yeah.
yeah. So, cause he injury defaulted out. So regional or returning state qualifier is not seated here, but overall, I think the seeds are absolutely spot on. I hope the next time Brown and Conroy wrestle, it lasts more than two periods though.
Yeah, you mentioned they have 3 more potential matchups for Rostkowski and Thompson. If that is the case and Brown and Conroy do wrestle 3 more times, that means Rostkowski and Thompson are very likely to wrestle 3 more times as well for third and fourth. So
yeah,
these matchups are going to happen again and again. We'll see if anyone can pull upsets on one another here, though, in that process. And yeah, I think Tustin's one to circle, depending on what his health is, right?
Yeah, right. Depends on how healthy he is.
Yeah, if he's able to, once you're injured in a postseason, it's going to be tough to really get fully healthy. But we'll see. I think he's a wild card here as far as like to figure out 5 through 8
for sure,
and how that could turn out. 285 pounds, Shep Turk of Thomas Jefferson was your champ in the East. In the North, Philip Rarick of Armstrong was your champ, and in the South, Cam Dana of West Allegheny was your champion. Shep Turk of Thomas Jefferson, number 1, Rarick of Armstrong, number 2, McConaughey of North Allegheny, number 3, and Cam Dana of West Allegheny, number 4.
Yeah, and so 2 of the results that stuck out to me, Cam Dana of West Allegheny beating Ben Lloyd. Dana was Regional 6 last year. Lloyd was a state qualifier. Lloyd's taken some losses this year. He's lost to Gibson. But the other one was Rarick of Armstrong over McConaughey of North Allegheny. That's a returning state qualifier as well that just got beat. So it's heavyweight, right? Shep Turk is clearly the guy. I don't think there's a question that he's established himself as the best heavyweight in the WPIAL. And I would say across both AA and AAA. But it's a matter of who else. Like Rarick, like if he wrestles like he's doing right now, because you also had Ryder Yikis there from Kiski, who's been banged up this year, but he was there and ends up finishing in 6th place because he injury defaults out. So he's another wild card. It's like whatever his health's like, he could come in and cause some issues. Ben Lloyd, depends on what Ben Lloyd shows up. Michael Gibson loses to Abdel from Montour. That was an upset, right? It's just heavyweight's a little bit more difficult to judge and weigh, but Shep Turk is clearly the favorite here, and I like the way the seeds are. I think Rarick deserves that 2nd seed after beating a state qualifier. Dana, same thing, regional medalist beats a state qualifier. Owen Rush, I'll tell you what, Owen Rush has looked really good in the latter part of the season. Just a sophomore, first year of varsity experience. I think he's been wrestling really well, establishing himself at heavyweight here, finishing 3rd in the section.
The schedule for AAA is exactly like AA. It starts at 5 o'clock on Friday from Canon McMillan High School, and it goes for the pigtail, preliminary, quarters, and first round of consolations. On Saturday, it starts at 10 a.m. with the second round of consies, 11:30 for the semis, and 3:30 for the medal matches. Full wrestlebacks from the round of 16. So if you lose in that opening round, you're eliminated. And the top 7 wrestlers advance to the regional tournament, but maybe an 8th, like Jeff had mentioned, in the event another district doesn't have all their spots filled up. So That's it. It's been an hour and a half of a lot of wrestling talk, Jeff.
Yeah, it is. I'm thoroughly exhausted now. But it's that time of year, man. We got the next couple of weeks are gonna be crazy. I'll tell you that. And we'll be there this Saturday, Friday and Saturday at Ken and Mac, and be there again the next weekend. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and just stick with us here on PA Power Wrestling, as we'll keep you updated throughout both tournaments, AA and AAA, and then get you set for next weekend's regional action for AA, AAA, and girls. A lot of wrestling still to come. So for Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. We appreciate